Welcome to the show. I'm Danny Kanell in for Jason Whitlock, and I'm going to tell you why the Raiders might actually be making a mistake going after John Gruden.
And I'm Colin Cowherd, and I'll tell you why the Pete Carroll era in Seattle, I think maybe it's run its course. Speak for yourself, starts now. And I like Pete.
Really?
I grew up in Seattle, but I got a theory on this.
Interesting.
Can't wait to hear it. Hello and welcome. We're joined today by Fox NFL analyst Tony Gonzalez and longtime NFL and college coach Charlie Weis. Let's start in Oakland, which could be where John Gruden is headed after reports surfaced that the Raiders were pursuing their former coach even before they fired Jack Del Rio after Sunday's game. For years, teams have tried and failed to tempt Gruden from the broadcast booth, but reportedly, Oakland's offer includes an ownership stake, and I'm sure a lot of millions behind that too, which has some convinced the hire is a done deal. Colin, is this a smart move by Oakland?
I'm not sure if it is. 10 years is a long time to be away from any industry. I mean, just think about tech in our lives. Okay, 10 years ago, they just introduced the GPS. Okay, the GPS is the 400th biggest tech tool in my life now. The game has changed. Tight ends weren't used as much 10 years ago. We had fullbacks. We had huddles. People are more mobile now. It's hard to retain your staff. The culture of football, baseball tends to look in the rearview mirror. Football's the opposite. There's a bravado that you pick up stuff first. You change stuff. There's been a lot of changes. When Joe Gibbs gone a few years, he came back and he really struggled to adapt. I think it's a real risky move here.
I think it's a reach when you look at what they're willing to give up and what they're going to pay him to be their next head coach. And a guy, and I don't like to use the term overrated because he does have a Super Bowl behind his name, but that Super Bowl came with Tony Dungy's defense running the Tampa 2. And as much as he gets credit for developing quarterbacks, he won that Super Bowl with Brad Johnson, who was a game manager at the position.
He was.
If you're the Raiders and you're willing to give up ownership, to do all these, to move all these parts, to bring John Gruden there, why didn't you go after maybe Pete Carroll? Why not Sean Payton? If you're offering this type, you're backing up the truck, why don't you go and shoot the true home run of somebody who's been in the league in recent years and had success there? Because I think if you're willing to do that, those coaches would pick up the phone and listen.
Yeah. My answer is juice. I mean, Gruden's got juice. You know, he reinvented himself on ESPN. Remember, when you get fired, it isn't because everyone likes you. I mean, the players don't like you, the coaches don't like you, the fans don't like you. No one likes you. Okay, and then he got into ESPN, and now all of a sudden he's the quarterback guru. I don't know if he ever coached a young quarterback in his whole career, but now he's got all the answers for those young quarterbacks right there, and they all love him because he's got shtick. You know, when he's in there, he's got that whole deal he's got. So right now, I think that the Raiders are looking at it as a guy who loved Oakland when he was there, could sell tickets. I mean, who knows? He might have a part ownership of a casino when they get to Las Vegas. We don't know what they're giving him.
Yeah.
I'm sure if he's going there, they're offering him the moon. Okay, the question is, what truly are they getting in return?
That's a very good question.
Well, you know, if I'm him, I would do it. If they're giving me, I really don't believe the ownership stuff. I think that's poppycock. I'm not buying into it. But it's been done before. Dick Vermeil showed that you can take some years off. He was around the game the whole time, calling the games, and he's connected to the game. You watch him; he does all that Gruden's camp and quarterbacks. He's friends with the guy. We heard that he's got a great relationship with the quarterback out there in Carr. It's a great situation to do it. If he's ever considered actually coming out of retirement and coaching, this is the best situation for him because it is primed and ready. This has got to be a coaching dream. And Davis, the owner, he loves him.
And you know what signaled this might really be happening? When Tampa announced that Cutter was staying. Mm-hmm. What? All of a sudden, Tampa's closed. You know, Tampa's going to open. That's where he's going. He's going to Tampa. He lives in Tampa. But all of a sudden, they're not on the market anymore. Why'd that happen? Maybe because he told him I wasn't going. He's not going there. And he's going somewhere else. I mean, it didn't happen by accident.
You know, it is interesting. I always felt Gruden has a Nick Saban quality. He wears people out. But by the time you want to strangle Nick, you graduate and go to the NFL. It's why he's perfect in college. I worked in Tampa. Now, I didn't work there when John did. I worked there when Tony Dungy did. But when I left, I have a lot of friends there. And they all told me, to Charlie's point, the players hated Gruden, the executives did, the front office, the coaches. he wore people out. So I always thought he's perfectly suited for college, but I think John sees himself as an NFL.
I think he would have been a disaster at the college level. I just don't think he would have dealt with the recruiting, the travel,
Boosters.
all of it. I don't think he would have worked. You said something about the 10 years off, because I think that's the initial reaction is people are saying, oh my goodness, that's way too long to be out of the game. But I think the fact that he actually was involved, and so I got a quick story for you. So I did a whole season of college football games with ESPN, and then I got bounced for the bowl game. It was the Outback Bowl, because it was in Tampa and because Gruden could do it in his backyard. So my entire crew, producer, director, they all did the game with Gruden. And I got back, and I was like, how was it? And they looked at me like I was the laziest guy on the planet, because they said Gruden had set up meetings with them, had burned a DVD of highlights of plays that the teams had done. Both teams, he had watched both games, given them an hour-long breakdown, which he dictated and basically told them what schemes to look out for throughout the game. Like, football's in his blood. I think he's been studying the game. He's a student of the game. But I would be curious to you, because I think there's some significant differences. They're doing more college concepts. You're seeing those aspects creep into the game. Are you concerned about the 10 years?
See, like in my case, I've had people in the last 3 years offer me jobs. And I've almost felt like I'm almost better suited to go somewhere as like an assistant head coach on offense, being there for an offensive coordinator, maybe who's not quite ready yet, but somebody who can feed them, because somebody who knows the game inside and out, but, can complement today's game, because in 3 years, the game's changed a lot.
It has.
It's not the same just let's line up in I right with the fullback offset and go play action pass and pop it to the tight end down the middle of the field versus to Tampa. I mean, it's not just that simple anymore.
Yep.
This is P.T. Barnum. I'm sorry. I went and saw The Greatest Showman. What a hire for him. I mean, you get this guy going to Vegas. He is a sucker born every minute. This is who you want at the helm. This is why they're going to do it too.
No, I buy into that a lot. To Seattle, where the Seahawks finished a roller coaster of a season with a loss to Arizona, missing the playoffs for the first time since 2011. Before the game, rumors started percolating that Pete Carroll was mulling retirement. The coach quickly shot them down, tweeting, quote, I ain't old enough to think about retiring. Danny, can Pete now reinvent and thrive in Seattle?
I don't think he can. I think this roster has been imploding over the last couple of years, and maybe you can pinpoint it back to the Super Bowl when Russell Wilson throws the interception and nobody really takes responsibility for that. Darrell Bevell still says it was the right call. The following year, Richard Sherman is yelling at Darrell Bevell. But even if you don't point it at that, money changes everything. When Russell Wilson becomes a $100 million contract, when the defensive players who were some of the youngest, cheapest players in the league are the face of that franchise while they're winning Super Bowls and taking the team to the Super Bowls, now they're all millionaires and they're looking around saying, where's mine? Or how come I'm not the highest paid player? I think what he has always thrived on has been controlled chaos. And I think he's lost control of that chaos with the personalities that are in that locker room. Now, if Michael Bennett, who kind of hinted that, hey, he might be done his time in Seattle, is gone, and maybe you have one voice in there that's a little bit brash and loud and kind of the voice of that team, then you can manage it. But I just feel like it's gone, and it's gone out of control for Pete Carroll in Seattle.
I largely agree. There's two things that I think are working against Pete. Number one is the division has gotten really good. Garoppolo and Jared Goff, with their respective coaches, they're not going away. They're young, they're talented, they're driven, they're smart. You got to pay them. That's 4 games a year.
And Arizona will get re-energized here too. I don't know who they'll bring in, but they'll get re-energized in there.
The other thing is that Pete kind of worked the system, and I give him credit for this. So when he came out of college, he was one of the few NFL coaches with really a college resume. He knew these kids. Well, he cherry-picked those drafts, those first 3 drafts. Look at this graph. He went into the NFL draft, and he knew more than the Belichicks or Andy Reids. He knew all these college players. He recruited them. But since that first 3 years, now as he separates from college football, he's not making steals in the draft.
And they got to manage a salary cap, which is a bigger
he has,
problem.
to your point, no salary.
That's the biggest problem, though. The biggest problem is they got a lot of old guys tied up with big money and not much room on the salary cap. And guess what? When you have no flexibility, when you have no or little flexibility, it's tough to make your team better.
In a really good division now. I mean, here's the other thing I want to throw out at you, is that Pete's always been a very emotional guy. I mean, I can remember before when Pete got hired at USC, the knock on him was he's kind of a flake. Okay, he's kind of a flake. And then he goes to USC and the bravado and the emotion, it works. But at the end, it kind of fizzled out, okay? These two guys came into the Pac-12, Chip Kelly and Harbaugh. He wasn't so great anymore. Well, now two guys have come into his division, McVay and Shanahan. And his emotional culture, I think it has a lifespan. There's too much politics. There's too much non-football. Michael Bennett, I think Pete's system, I'm not sure if it's built for 20 years like Belichick's. I'm not sure it is.
Well, even though in my case he beat me on a regular basis. Okay, so let me first say the positives. I mean, I think Pete, before he left USC, I mean, he had it rocking and rolling, and they were really, really good. I mean, he might got out of Dodge before the problems hit, but he was smart enough to get out of Dodge. So he gets up to Seattle and then did exactly what you said. He built this up quick, and they got good in a hurry. But that's fine as long as you're winning. Okay, when all of a sudden you're not winning, guess what? Those pro players, I've dealt with these guys, they see through you in a heartbeat now. I mean, if you're sitting at rah-rah stuff with most of those players, they're looking at you, what the hell's wrong with this guy? They really want, just tell me what to do. Just teach me what to do. Okay, what do you want me to, what are we doing? Show me that, help me be better so that I can make myself the best player I could possibly be.
So what you're saying is that culture, that emotional culture, when you lose, you've told me this.
Adversity.
When you lose, it's not the same.
When you have an emotional culture, and I've had those before, and you're getting used to that speech. And I told you earlier on your show, I can't stand motivation. I'm done with that. Just tell me a routine, and let's go out there and stop wasting time. I don't need the fire and brimstone speech every time from these emotional type coaches. And when you're losing and you're having that emotional speech, you get really frustrated and you get bored, and you're like, you start saying to yourself, I'm gonna pull my hair out because it's not working. You're talking to me and you're trying to motivate me, and it's not working. What I think they need to do, first of all, I do think if he can coach, I think he's the second best coach in the league. Bill Belichick's the number one coach. If he still feels like he has it, I trust him. He just needs, it's time, everything has its course. And the beautiful thing about Bill Belichick is that they keep, like I said, like Bruce Lee, it's water. They keep going out. They keep refreshing all the time. He needs to refresh. Some of those guys, they got to make some tough decisions. You got to cut a couple of those guys. The first 3 years that Pete Carroll was in the NFL, he had the highest turnover in the whole NFL. That means as cool as he was and fun, but if you weren't playing and buying into what he was saying, you're out of here. He needs to get back to the basics, push and implode, and let's start rebuilding this.
Being the player's coach is great, and it creates a great environment. But when the players take advantage of that and you don't send them packing because you can't because of the salary cap, that's when you have the issues and some of the warning signs you're seeing in Seattle.
By the way, San Francisco and the Rams have a lot of salary cap.
I mean, the 49ers got $100 million.
Yes, they do. They do. All right, welcome back. Tony Gonzalez, Charlie Weis are here, and we're thankful for it. Let's go to New England. The Patriots beat the Jets yesterday, pretty methodical, clinched the AFC's top seed despite another kind of average game out of Tom Brady. No doubt he's had the best season ever by a 40-year-old quarterback. That cannot be argued. But in recent weeks, he's showing signs of age. Big drops in stats across the board. All right, Danny, you concerned about the 40-year-old Tommy Brady heading into the playoffs?
Not one bit. I mean, the Brady-Belichick combination is the best bet in all of sports to get to a championship. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to win it this year. I think they will. But to have any concern, by the way, in those last 5 games, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, they're still 4-1. And they had the loss against Miami, which kind of most teams have those. I think the thing that's alarming about it is the fact that it was the Patriots, and it's so not what you're used to seeing with the Patriots. And Brady did look rough in that game where he was pressured. That's the thing that has always been his rough spot, has been anyone's. If you can pressure him, if you can harass him the way that the Dolphins did in that Monday night game, he's going to look 40. But I feel like the protection will dial in. I feel like one of the most important things are obviously the home field, but also the bye week, a chance for him to kind of take that breather, to get healthy. And, I mean, he had the 4-game suspension last year, which really helped his season. But the bye week, again, to get that body rejuvenated, to get back, and then the home field. And the addition of James Harrison, I think, was the evil genius of Bill Belichick in full motion. I think that it might not even be sack totals, sack production, I'd love to hear the download session that took place between James Harrison and Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia and even the offensive coaches coming over saying, what can we glean from James Harrison to help us give us just a little bit of an edge? If it's snap count, if it's the check color, whatever they're using for audibles, whatever little piece of information that is in a game that comes down to inches, and we saw how close the game was in Pittsburgh just a few weeks ago, that edge is something that Bill Belichick always looks for, and I think he's going to have something in James Harrison.
Well, I do think Tom is getting older, and I think if you look at, I did a breakdown about a month ago. If you look at Brady's 13th, any game after Week 12 in the last 5 years, he's not quite the same.
Well, it kind of gets cold in Foxborough, just to let you know that. You live in L.A. now, okay? So I'm giving you a little tidbit. Okay, Foxborough in December, it gets a little chilly. In January, it's worse. Okay, so, I mean,
but
there is that thing called the weather factor in these games. Right?
I do, and I understand he wears kale pajamas. I get all that.
Yes, get it.
And a wetsuit if it's
Yeah, and to your point, he's got buys and home field. I will say this. The genius of New England is they're not a great football team. They're a great business. And like any great business, they're not beholden to one employee. I mean, he got hurt. Brissett won a game. Garoppolo won games. Matt Castle won 11 games. I think they are uniquely built in this sport as a business to withstand an aging quarterback. They don't ask Tommy to do the zone read. They don't ask Tommy to carry them. To your point, when he hasn't played well, they've got a stable of very competent running backs right now. They can all catch, they can block. So I don't see, in a weaker AFC, Tom being an issue. I do think it's the least talented defense he's had, I think maybe ever.
Yeah, they're a mediocre front seven. They play hard. They're bend but don't break. Bringing in Harrison, even at 39 years old, he's one of the best. He's one of the better guys, because they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of frontline guys. Look at the one guy they had who was Studley that they didn't trade away was Dante Hightower. Okay, and he got hurt early in the year. Okay, they were getting pass rush out of him, but they traded away the other guys they had that were pass rushers for whatever issues they were, and left them a little void in that position in the front seven. Their secondary is a little bit stronger, but with that being the case, I mean they're vulnerable to anyone who's got some offensive fire.
They are.
Yeah, they're definitely vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I still like him in the AFC.
Tom is fine. You said that the kale pajamas, the sleep underwear, the macro diet, the massages, the chakra cleansing, everything that he does, the mentality of Tom Brady at this time of year. It's like I don't even understand why this question's here because have we not learned? Why do we keep questioning this guy? I will not doubt Tom Brady until he decides to retire because he has shown and proved it year in and year out. Look at his record again. They get a first-round bye again. He's going to have a week off now. He's going to, like I said, he's going to be smoothing it up and sleeping at 12 hours a night, and he's going to be fine. And he's going to go in there with that relentless attitude, that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, killer mentality, Jerry Rice of focus and tenacity and getting in the zone, and he's going to have another outstanding playoffs. That's all there is to it. And why would you not think that? I don't understand the question.
There's a race. Like so many people want to be right as the person that says, there it is. That's when Tom Brady went over the hill.
And somebody will be right eventually. See, I told you.
Because remember after week one, after the Chiefs game, when they got blown out at home and he struggled in that game, everybody was willing to write them off. Oh, here it is. Here's the 40-year-old season. And what'd he do? He pretty much put the team on his back when the defense was atrocious early in the season and put them right back where they need to be.
Kobe Bryant scored 60 points in his last game, proving that, they can still bring it. The legends can still bring it. I mean, Drew Bledsoe's a friend of mine. He's like, I can still make all the throws. I don't want to go through practice. Tommy needs a bye. Tommy needs a little rest. Tommy would be better over 40 degrees than under it. But, man, when you're great, it's not a matter of you can't do it. You can't do it all the time. But Kobe scored 60 his last night. 99% of NBA players will never score 40. So I think Tommy's fine when you consider he could have 2 byes before a Super Bowl, and they'll never leave Foxborough.
It wouldn't hurt having a little Julian Edelman either.
Yeah,
it wouldn't hurt. Take a little
a rough day is not getting me off Tom Brady. Welcome back. Tony Gonzalez is back, and we're joined now by the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. I dunked all over him when we played pickup hoops at the Super Bowl. Let's move to Atlanta.
I love that.
Where the Falcons got a huge win over the Panthers yesterday. The win put Atlanta in the playoffs, but put some serious doubts in the minds of Panthers fans, with Cam Newton having one of his worst games of the year. I think it was the worst of his career, throwing 3 picks with a passer rating hovering around 30. Colin, you have to be worried that Cam's going to hurt the Panthers in the playoffs, right?
Nope. In fact, I'm picking them to beat the Saints. Whoa. I think Carolina's coaches have done, like, I understand Sean McVay's coach of the year. Totally get it. Carolina's coaches are really good. They figured something out. Okay, they've had Cam for all these years, and in the offseason, they're like, listen, man, he's imprecise, he's not accurate, and he's emotionally up and down. Let's make him the icing, not the cake. Icing does make the cake better, but it's not everything. So they go get Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, and they amplify their defense. And I watch Carolina, and I'm like, I don't worry about Cam, because they're not dependent on Cam. Carolina is the only team in the league where if I showed you the stats and said the quarterback threw for 160 yards, they won. You'd be like, oh, that's Carolina. The coaches have figured out, listen, man, you can't depend on Cam. He literally is a quarterback that's not accurate. That would be like a point guard that can't pass.
Right.
But the Carolina coaches have figured it out that we run the football, top 5. We play defense, top 5. I think they're going to beat New Orleans.
The problem is he's kind of Blake Bortles. When you said that, show me a stat line that's show me 130 yards passing and they win. That's what the Jags have done with Blake Bortles. But what do we ask of Blake Bortles? Don't kill us. Don't throw 3 and 4 interceptions like you saw Cam Newton throw yesterday. So that is a huge concern for me, because at some point, playing against the Saints defense, Cam Newton is going to have to come up and make a play, which he did throughout his MVP season. That season, to me, was an aberration. The rest of Cam Newton's career is who Cam Newton is, and that should be very alarming. And for me, it is one of the biggest letdowns in all of sports. He is the most physically gifted player in the entire NFL. He is the LeBron James of the NFL, and yet he has not lived up to an ounce of the potential. And that's even with all the success he's had. I wish he put half as much time in preparation for the game as he does his wardrobe, because then you might see him actually become elite quarterback.
No. Tony, he's killing him with the kindness, huh? Like, I mean, geez. But I will say this, Colin. Cam Newton's faced playoff teams 8 times this year. He's 4-4, 11 interceptions, only 8 touchdowns. And when he faced New Orleans, 3 interceptions. When he faced Atlanta, 3 interceptions. Philadelphia, 3 picks. And what they started to do late in the season is Cam, like you said, can't complete these short passes. Let's just have him run the ball. In December, he carried the ball the most of any month in the season, rushed for more yards than any month in the season. He's become that guy who's afraid to throw. He's now running the football. I don't see how they have a chance against the Saints. I mean, they don't know whether they're a passing team, a running team. All they've got is the defense. I like the Saints in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, defense wins championships. But I'm not going to agree with you. I do think the Saints are going to win that football game. But Cam, right now, I think this is Cam, though. I'm not surprised by it. And I see him go, that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, when he is somewhat accurate. I don't know what it is, because I always try to get in the mentality of an athlete. And if you do it one time, why can't you do it the next week? That's just always been my mentality. And he's so frustrating, because like you said, if there was a scouting combine, he'd be the first pick in the whole NFL out of anybody, period, because he's so athletically gifted. He's got that great arm, but for some reason he can't put it together. And in a playoff situation, they are not as good as they were when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. They're not going to be able to hold up. I think it's one and done for them. Cam Newton goes out there and rushes the ball 10, 12 times. That's the only way they can win, is if he's making plays with his legs, and I'm talking about running the ball, not even scrambling and throwing the ball, running the ball. That's the only chance they're going to have against the Saints.
I'll tell you why it's up and down is mechanics. He's never improved his mechanics. He throws too upright. He doesn't have the best footwork. There's no consistency there. And that's what would be frustrating. I think it's a waste of talent, because he doesn't put in that work in the offseason. And I think there are moments. Remember, one of his best games this season came after the reporter incident. Remember, there was a female reporter, and he made the inappropriate joke, and he caught so much heat. I guarantee you he was dialed in and focused and said, I have to come out and play good this week, and he did. but I don't think he puts that type of work and plays with a chip on his shoulder every single week. I think he enjoys his success. I think he likes to live a little. I don't think he has that mindset of I can be the greatest if I just work harder. It's I can be the greatest because I've always been the greatest. Like, and he has at every level.
How can that happen with a veteran? Tony, you played in the league for a while. How many years for Cam? 6 or 7?
Yeah.
And he's still inconsistent? Like Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, these are veterans. You know what they're giving you every week. Cam comes out and you're like, is it going to be 4 TDs or 3 picks? And you just can't have that with a former MVP.
I also think he's sort of coddled by
He always has been.
by the Charlotte press, because Charlotte has a history of great college sports success. Carolina, Duke. They don't have pro sports success. Hockey, they don't have a baseball team. NBA's been bad. So Cam is their most interesting guy. Like and so the media doesn't hold him accountable. If you put Cam in a Philadelphia and the media is crushing him, I think Cam would feel like, I got to dial it in. To your point, if you look at yards per attempt, I mean, clearly the coaches in Carolina, this is what parents do. Parents only give kids as much as they think they can handle. Look at his yards per attempt. The staff in Carolina is telling you, we just don't think he can handle a ton offensively.
He's a captain checkdown. That's what he's becoming,
That
right?
is
I mean, Greg Olsen for 8 yards.
Well, you know why? Because if you throw down the field, he's inaccurate. He's a 58% career completion percentage guy. That's usually around 28th, 29th in the NFL. He's worse than Blake Bortles as a career completion percentage. He's not accurate, which to me, there are some things. I think you are naturally gifted as a thrower. I think there are some guys that can just throw it and they can hit a target. But if you're not, then you can hone it in and improve just a couple percentage points. If you get that up to 63, 64,
you're an NFL
you could be
quarterback.
Unstoppable, especially with his skill set.
To Philadelphia, where Nick Foles and the Eagles offense struggled yet again. I mean, it was ugly. Closing out the regular season, getting shut out 6-0 by the Cowboys. We had that game on Fox, I think. It wasn't one of our better ones. The game didn't matter, and Foles only played 1 quarter, but since Carson Wentz got hurt, this team has not been the same. With their once high-flying offense falling near the bottom of the league in yards, third down percentage, first downs, points. Danny, you writing off the Eagles with Foles under center?
All right, so full disclosure, this morning when we started talking about topics for the show, I was done. I was ready to throw Foles out and say the Eagles are toast. But after looking at it a little bit, so I try to take pride in not being emotional overreaction guy, right? I try to sit back and say, all right, what are the facts of the situation? I think they were a Super Bowl favorite. They were a contender to reach the Super Bowl as the best team in the NFC. I clearly don't think they're that. But I think the notion that they're done, that they're going to get bounced in the first round, I think that's an overreaction. And when it goes to Nick Foles, he played atrocious yesterday in a game that didn't matter, where it was abysmal conditions. It was some of the worst conditions you could see in an offensive game. But I look back to the game when they were on the road, when Carson Wentz got hurt. He played great in that game. There was a critical third down to ice the game, and Doug Peterson trusted him enough to make a throw, and he did, to close out the game. Then I look at the game at the Giants when their defense struggles. He has to step up his level of play, throws 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So, and then the last 2 weeks, no doubt, have been a struggle, and that is the biggest thing for me. Can Nick Foles regain his confidence? Because I think it's a mental block right now. And I think he needed to play well in that first half, which he clearly didn't. So I am concerned about them, but by no means am I writing them off as far as the rest of the season.
Well, I am.
Thank you.
I think the reason I don't write off Minnesota, because the gap between starter Bradford and backup Keenum is really not very great. Carson Wentz was the MVP of the league, and Nick Foles the backup. That's the Grand Canyon. They also lost a left tackle, a terrific linebacker, Jordan Hicks. They've had some running back injuries. In this world we live in today of salary cap and player mobility, even great teams have about 4 Tony Gonzalez's. And that's, I'm stretching it. The Patriots have 2.
Disrespectful, man.
No, but I mean, the Patriots have.
We're Hall of Famers.
My whole point is.
I'm not a Hall of Famer.
You don't have the Pittsburgh Steelers of the mid-'70s where 4 guys in the D-line are like. And so the reality is they've lost 3 of them. Their quarterback, their left tackle, their middle linebacker. You can't win the NFC with that. Maybe the AFC you can. I just think the NFC's too good, and they lost too many good players.
So you guys are telling me that Nick Foles was terrible the last 2 weeks against Oakland and then the first quarter. Now he's going to sit for 2 weeks and listen to the media, guys like us, every show out there trashing him for 2 weeks. You can't do it. His confidence has to be at an all-time low. And when you look at what got Philadelphia to where they were, time of possession, run the ball, Carson Wentz, long ball control drives, now you got to rely on the defense. And this secondary has been abysmal.
Yeah.
Both their cornerbacks are getting lit up by Oakland, okay? The week before, Eli Manning torched that bad secondary. Guys, no shot.
Bounced first round.
Off the
First
train.
round lost, I would say double-digit loss in the first
Really?
in the first game, yeah.
Well, here's what I know. When I always look at players in the NFL and guys would walk in, you see them run big, strong, fast guys. And I'm like, what is the difference? What makes this guy great and this guy just an average player? And it's all here. And I always point to the head, okay? Because confidence. You said it right there. Momentum. That's all playoff football is. There's no minimum like momentum. And right now, Nick Foles, if I were him, I would be out there talking to the best sports psychologists in the country. Seriously, I'm not kidding you. Yeah. There's really good guys out there. That's what Tom House does for Tom Brady and Matt Ryan and those guys. They have and they'll tell you right now that just the frame of mind, especially for a quarterback, you cannot go in there playing the way he did. Those last 2 weeks, I'm scared for the Philadelphia Eagles because I agree with you. They're not going to win if he's playing the way he is. Yeah. And it's confidence because he's shown he has the ability. He can do it. It's just, do you believe in yourself enough to get it done? That is more important than any practice or any film that he can watch. It's about what is he going to feed his mind and that confidence going.
I think that's why the first couple drives, the first quarter of their playoff game at home is huge for him. Like if they can design some plays, get him some completions, because the quarterback's confidence, and if you're not established, not a Brady, a Breeze, and you're a guy like Foles who clearly has been up and down, he could find that confidence with a successful first quarter. Now, I'm sure the fans are sitting back watching saying, man, where
they're
are we
nervous
going?
in Philly.
No, but I think if he could get and have a game where he gets some completions, they start having some success, I think he could put behind this last couple weeks. But you guys all sound like I should have listened to the first voice I heard in my head this morning.
Trust your first
Oh, no,
instinct,
the
Danny.
trash.
Come on.